Imagine, the person you love most in the entire world.
Right. Okay.
And imagine they finally get a piece of news they have been just absolutely desperate for.
Like a medical result or something.
Yeah, exactly. Like a clean bill of health after a really terrifying scare. Or maybe they finally landed a job that pulls them out of financial ruin.
Oh, man, that feeling.
Right. When you see their face light up, when you hear that little crack in their voice, you feel a physical weight drop off your own
That's
shoulders.
so ticklish.
Your chest expands. Your breathing actually changes. It's a visceral reaction.
Yeah, it's like a shared nervous system.
Exactly. Now, I want you to imagine feeling that exact same intense, visceral physical relief for the stranger who just aggressively cut you off in traffic.
Oh, wow. That is a stretch.
Or, the barista who just got your morning order completely hopelessly wrong. Imagine having a nervous system that registers the joy and the sorrow of literally every single human being on the planet as intimately as your own flesh and blood.
I mean, honestly, it sounds utterly impossible.
Totally impossible.
It sounds like a recipe for immediate psychological collapse.
Right. It sounds like your brain would just completely short circuit. But that exact state of radical, boundary-dissolving empathy is what we're exploring today in this deep dive into the source material.
It's quite a journey we're going on today.
It really is. We are looking at an excerpt from a daily study guide focused on Chapter 6 of the Bhagavad Gita. And the whole premise today is the ultimate collision between our highest philosophical ideals and our deeply flawed, easily distracted biological reality.
Yeah, the messy human part.
Exactly. We are going to look at the absolute highest definition of empathy ever recorded, and that immediately crash headfirst into the incredibly relatable, frustrating reality of the messy human mind on like a random Tuesday afternoon.
And to truly appreciate the magnitude of that collision, we have to look at the psychological architecture that the source material establishes right from the very beginning.
Right, the foundation.
Yeah. The guide references yesterday's lesson to sort of set the stage for us. It establishes a foundation of what it calls the ultimate state of spiritual security.
Spiritual security.
Yes. And this security is defined very specifically. It's the realization, like the deeply internalized knowing, that you are never separated from the divine.
Let's stop right there for a second and just look at the behavioral psychology of that.
Yeah.
Because it fundamentally alters the human operating system.
Oh, entirely.
If we look at modern psychological studies on, the scarcity mindset,
Right. Scarcity mindset is a great parallel here.
we see that when a human being feels fundamentally disconnected, right? When they believe resources are scarce, that they are totally alone, just fending for themselves in this hostile, random universe, their entire cognitive framework narrows.
It shrinks down to basic survival.
Exactly. Their primary biological drive becomes self-preservation. You start hoarding,
Hoarding food, money.
and most importantly, you hoard your emotional bandwidth. Fear just becomes your absolute baseline.
You are operating from a permanent deficit? Yes.
Exactly. And when you are in a deficit, you cannot afford to look at anyone else's plate. You just can't.
Right.
But if you achieve the spiritual security described in the text, that absolute, unwavering certainty that you are inextricably linked to the divine.
And therefore linked to the fabric of reality itself.
Right, exactly. Then that scarcity illusion just shatters. The fear dissolves because there is no isolated self left to fiercely protect.
The perimeter walls just come down. You realize the fortress you've been defending all your life is actually, well, a prison.
Precisely. It's a prison of the ego. And that realization paves the way for the logical next step, which is the whole focus of verses 32 and 33 of chapter 6.
Which is what we're really digging into today.
Right. Because once you no longer have to obsessively patrol the borders of your own ego, your attention naturally, inevitably turns outward.
It has nowhere else to go.
Exactly. The focus of the text shifts entirely from the internal cultivation of the self to our connection with absolutely all other beings. And the text, doesn't just suggest a polite neighborly connection.
No, not at all.
It demands a standard of connection that is frankly staggering. It asks for a complete rewiring of how we perceive the boundaries of our own skin.
It's a tall order.
Let's look directly at the text. This is shloka 6.32. The translation provided in our source is, and let me just read this here. O Arjuna, he who assesses the joys and sorrows of all beings by the same standard as his own, seeing them as his own everywhere, is considered the highest yogi.
So the guide highlights a really vital Sanskrit word from this verse that serves as the engine for this entire philosophy.
And that word is atmalpamyena.
Yes.
Let's break that down because it's doing like a lot of heavy lifting here.
It really is. It is a compound concept that essentially translates to using one's own self as the ultimate measure or standard.
Okay.
And what's fascinating here is that this is a profound, radical departure from how we typically operate in modern society. Think about how we consume suffering or joy today.
We consume it constantly.
We do. But we have essentially perfected the art of distant sympathy.
Oh, distant sympathy. That perfectly describes the whole doom-scrolling phenomenon, doesn't it?
Exactly. That's a perfect example.
Like seeing a geopolitical tragedy or a massive natural disaster on a news feed, you feel this fleeting pang of sadness for exactly like 4 seconds,
Right.
and then you just seamlessly swipe down to check the local weather or, I don't know, watch a recipe video.
Because we view other people's happiness, and especially their suffering, as abstract data points.
Yeah, abstract is the right word.
We acknowledge them intellectually. We can articulate that a situation is tragic. We might even donate money or feel a genuine, momentary sense of pity.
Sure.
But we always keep a protective cognitive barrier erected. We are observing the storm through a pane of reinforced glass.
Yeah, it doesn't truly concern us in a visceral, bodily way.
Right. But Atmapamena, true empathy, as defined by this text, it demands the shattering of that glass.
Which is terrifying.
It is. It is not offering sympathy from a safe, detached distance. It is experiencing another person's emotional and physical state as if it were literally your own.
I have to challenge this, though,
Okay, go for it.
because looking at it through the lens of modern neuroscience and just basic cognitive load, this sounds like a fast track to profound emotional burnout.
Oh, sure. It sounds exhausting.
Right. If I am actively assessing the joys and sorrows of all beings by the exact same standard as my own, if every sorrow on my social media feed registers in my nervous system as my own personal tragedy, how does a human being function?
That's a valid question.
Like, how do we actually execute this without being completely emotionally paralyzed by the weight of global suffering? I mean, if every heartbreak is my heartbreak, I would literally never get out of bed.
Yeah.
The biological cost just seems impossible.
And that is the natural defense mechanism of the modern analytical mind, right? To assume that this level of empathy is a fatal drain on our resources.
It feels like a drain.
We view empathy as an expenditure of energy, like a battery draining.
Right.
But the source material provides a deeply grounded, tactile analogy to help us understand how this operates in practice. It reframes this empathy not as a cognitive drain, but as a source of expansive, generative joy.
The cooking analogy.
Yes, exactly.
And this is where the text moves out of the clouds and right into the kitchen, which I love.
Yeah.
The guide asks us to contemplate the meticulous, exhaustive care required to prepare a warm, traditional, regional vegetarian meal for your family.
Let's really deconstruct the psychology of this act because there are layers here that explain the actual mechanism of Atmapamena.
Okay, lay it out for us.
Think about the labor involved. You are not just cooking for basic caloric utility.
Right, if you were doing that, you just toss them a protein bar.
Or a meal replacement shake and tell them to get back to work.
Exactly. But the guide is remarkably specific here. It says a warm, traditional, regional vegetarian meal. Every single adjective there is loaded with psychological and historical weight.
Precisely. Words like traditional and regional imply a continuity of history. They imply memory, a sense of belonging, and the passing down of generational knowledge. You are cooking food that connects the people at your table to their roots.
And warm implies physical comfort and soothing.
Right. And vegetarian, in the context of this specific philosophical tradition, deeply aligns with principles of ahimsa.
Non-harm.
Non-harm and purity of intention. You are not just throwing together a meal. You are architecting a holistic experience of care and safety.
And the text points out the granular, almost obsessive details involved in this kind of caretaking. Like, you adjust the spices, you meticulously test the temperatures.
You're constantly hovering over it.
You are constantly sampling the broth, asking yourself, is this too much salt? Is this cumin going to completely overpower the dish?
Will this be too spicy for my grandchild?
Or too bland for my spouse?
Well, exactly.
You enter this state of hyperfocus. You are laboring over a hot stove, sweating on your feet for hours.
Yeah.
And so the question is, why? Why does a human being voluntarily put themselves through that kind of exhausting labor?
Well, we do it because of the neurological and emotional payoff.
Okay.
But we have to look very closely at where and how that payoff happens. The source text explains that you serve the dish because the satisfaction and comfort it brings to your spouse or your grandchild.
Registers in your own heart is joy.
Yes.
And that right there, that is the crucial mechanism. Their joy doesn't just cause you joy as a secondary reaction. Like, their joy is your joy.
Think about the physical mirroring that happens when your spouse sits down after an exhausting day and takes that first bite of the meal you labored over. Their shoulders physically drop.
You can see it.
They let out a long sigh of relief. The tension just leaves their face. And when you watch that happen, you don't say to yourself, oh, I recognize intellectually that my spouse is experiencing an influx of dopamine.
Right, you aren't diagnosing them.
No, you experience a warm bloom of happiness inside your own chest. Your own shoulders drop.
Yeah, you feel it.
You feel their relief in your nervous system. You have literally used your own self, your own bodily sensations, as the measure for their joy. That is Amapamiana in action.
It's proof that we already possess the hardware for this.
Yeah.
We aren't being asked to invent a brand new alien emotion.
No, we already do this instinctively.
Right, we do it for our kids, our partners, our closest friends. We completely understand what it feels like to have our emotional boundary become entirely permeable to someone else's lived experience. The barrier between me and you just dissolves at that dinner table.
It does. But, and here's the monumental challenge the text presents. This is where we attempt to scale this empathy.
Ah, right, the scaling problem.
The highest yogi, according to verse 32, takes this highly intimate, deeply familiar shared joy from the dining table.
And extends it outward to encompass all beings,
All of them.
which flies directly in the face of our evolutionary biology.
Completely.
Because from an evolutionary standpoint, kin selection dictates that we extend our resources and our empathy to our immediate genetic circle, right, or our tribal in-group to ensure survival.
Yeah, keep the tribe safe.
The yogi is essentially hacking their evolutionary programming to include the entire human race and beyond in their in-group, all beings. The guy in front of you in line, the politician you absolutely despise,
Right.
the stranger halfway across the world whose name you will never, ever know.
All of them. The superpower of the yogi is recognizing that the boundary we draw around family or friends, while evolutionarily useful.
It kept us alive.
Exactly. It's useful, but it is ultimately a spiritual illusion. If we go back to the foundation of spiritual security, which is that we are never separated from the divine, and the divine exists equally in all beings,
Then there is objectively no other.
none. The profound, chest-expanding relief you feel when your grandchild is comforted is the exact same biological and spiritual relief the yogi feels when anyone is comforted.
If you're listening to this right now, I just want you to pause and genuinely reflect on that.
It's heavy.
Think about the last time you felt a physical weight lift off your own body because someone else was relieved of their suffering. Like maybe a friend called to say their biopsy was benign.
Oh, yeah.
You probably wept. You felt lighter. That is atmopamiyena, the text is asking. What if you walked through the world with that level of permeability toward everyone you met?
It is not an abstract academic philosophy. It is a tangible, physical, bodily resonance with the world.
And it is a staggering, monumental ideal. I mean, it represents the absolute summit of human spiritual achievement.
Which is precisely what makes the very next verse in the text so incredibly brilliant and honestly so necessary.
Right, here's where it gets really interesting, because after laying out this incredibly lofty, beautiful, frankly terrifying ideal of supreme empathy and unbroken equanimity.
Arjuna speaks up.
Yes, Arjuna speaks up in verse 33. And just for context, Arjuna is the student here, right? He's the legendary warrior who is receiving this cosmic wisdom on the battlefield.
And importantly, Arjuna does not just nod politely and say, yes, master, I completely understand. I will go implement this flawless equanimity immediately.
Not even close. Let me read the translation for shlokas 6.33. Arjuna said, O Sudana, this system of yoga, which you have summarized as equanimity, I do not see how it can be enduring, because the mind is restless and unsteady.
I really just want to linger on the profound, enduring relief contained in this single sentence.
It is the ultimate reality crash. It is the moment the philosophical balloon just completely pops.
It truly is. I mean, we have to remember the context of who Arjuna is. He is not a novice.
Right.
He is a peerless warrior, a prince of immense discipline, physical prowess, and strategic focus. He is basically the archetype of the elite human.
The ultimate overachiever.
Exactly. Yet, faced with the demand of Atmapamyena, he does not feign enlightenment. He listens to the ultimate standard of empathy, looks at his own internal state, and essentially says, this all sounds wonderfully poetic in theory.
It's a beautiful concept.
But my mind is far too chaotic to actually execute it. I cannot do this.
It is so deeply validating.
Right.
He is basically saying, listen, Krishna, I understand the dining table analogy. I comprehend the logic of supreme empathy, but my brain is not a still lake.
Yeah.
My brain is a poorly wired switchboard where the operator is frantically plugging cords into the wrong sockets while all the lights flash at once.
That's a great image.
Right. Like, how am I supposed to hold this enduring equanimity when I cannot even keep my own thoughts in a straight line for 5 minutes?
The timelessness of this frustration is what makes this text so enduring. Arjuna is voicing a struggle that echoes through every single generation across every culture.
Yeah.
He is articulating the fundamental tension of the human condition, the agonizing gap between our philosophical ideals and our biological hardware.
Hardware just can't run the software.
Exactly. We possess the unique cognitive capacity to conceive of perfect equanimity, perfect empathy, and perfect peace. We know what is good and right. We can envision the mountaintop.
But we are strapped into a nervous system and a brain that absolutely refuses to sit still long enough to get there.
It constantly wants novelty.
Yes. It wants to jump to the future to worry about a deadline, or it wants to drag us into the past to replay an argument from, like, 5 years ago while we are just trying to sit and breathe.
Let's unpack the specific Sanskrit word used here because it offers deep insight.
Okay, what is it?
The word is chanchalatva.
Chanchalatvat.
It translates to restlessness, fickleness, or agitation. But it's not just referring to a mild distraction. In the ancient context, this agitation was often compared to the wind.
The wind, interesting.
An invisible, relentless force that is impossible to grab or permanently subdue. The mind is inherently, fundamentally turbulent.
Modern psychology might clinicalize this agitation, right, into categories of attention deficit or anxiety.
Sure.
But the ancients recognized this turbulence not as a disorder of a few, but as the default operating state of the human instrument.
Arjuna is exposing the raw, uncomfortable truth here. All of our lofty spiritual ideals are practically useless if we refuse to acknowledge the mechanical, structural difficulty of the instrument we are using to achieve them.
The human mind is a wildly unsteady, untrustworthy tool for the job of enlightenment.
And if Arjuna, a highly disciplined warrior living thousands of years ago, thought the mind was restless,
Oh, man.
imagine trying to achieve equanimity with a smartphone in your pocket.
It's a nightmare.
It is. The source text brilliantly brings this ancient struggle into the 21st century for us, because we have not evolved past Chanjalatvat. In fact, we have engineered an entire modern world that weaponizes and monetizes that exact restlessness.
The attention economy.
Yes.
We have built a society that actively mines our distraction for profit. And the guide gives us two very specific modern digital equivalents of this restlessness to help us understand the cognitive load involved.
These are incredibly apt metaphors.
They really are, because they require the modern version of extreme localized concentration.
Let's explore the first digital analogy the guide provides: executing highly detailed multi-parameter tasks on a screen.
Okay.
Specifically, it uses the example of tweaking micro-contrast adjustments to flawlessly restore a faded historical photograph.
If you have ever done high-level photo editing, graphic design, or even just, like, tried to perfectly format a very stubborn, complex document,
A spreadsheet that won't cooperate.
yes, you intimately know the physiological state this requires. This is cognitive load theory in practice.
You are zoomed in at 400% on your screen.
Looking at individual pixels.
You are unconsciously holding your breath.
Your posture is rigid, your eyes are just totally strained, and you are burning immense amounts of glucose just to maintain focus.
You are making microscopic adjustments to a digital curve, trying to pull just enough shadow detail out of this old photograph without blowing out the highlights.
You are in a state of intense hyperfocus. It is, in many ways, a modern, secular form of extreme meditation.
You are channeling all of your mental energy to force order onto digital chaos.
Exactly. And the second example the text uses is scripting complex background automations on a mobile device.
Think about coding.
Right, coding or setting up a multi-step workflow logic. Like, if this trigger happens, then execute this command, but only if these three other variables are met.
The cognitive architecture required for that is immense. You are holding a massive, invisible, and incredibly fragile house of cards in your working memory.
Yes. If you drop a single variable, if you forget one line of syntax,
The entire logic chain breaks.
you are tiptoeing through the architecture of your own logic. You are
Hmm.
balancing everything perfectly, and then we reach the point of fracture.
It always happens.
Always. The guide describes this moment perfectly. Just as you reach the absolute crucial apex of alignment, the photograph looks flawless, the code is perfectly structured and about to compile what happens.
The system fractures.
Yeah.
The software behaves unexpectedly. The application silently crashes to the desktop.
Or you get that spinning loading wheel that just freezes indefinitely.
Or perhaps even more disruptively, the fracture comes from within. A stray thought interrupts your flow.
A notification pings.
You suddenly, violently remember an urgent email you forgot to send 3 hours ago.
And what is the immediate physiological response to that interruption? What happens to the body?
The phenomenon of ego depletion takes over.
Okay, explain that.
The brain, which has been expending massive amounts of energy to maintain this artificial state of hyperfocus, uses the interruption as an excuse to shatter the focus entirely to conserve energy.
So the mind instantly scatters into frustration.
Exactly.
You feel it physically. You don't just lose your work, you lose your entire equilibrium. You feel a sudden spike of cortisol. A flush of heat travels up your neck.
You might let out a groan, slam your mouse on the desk.
Or curse loudly at the inanimate screen.
Eh.
Your carefully constructed architecture of focus just shatters into a million jagged pieces.
This is a vital, crucial connection that the source material makes. This modern digital scattering, this immediate visceral descent into frustrated chaos, is exactly what Arjuna is experiencing on a spiritual level.
The psychological mechanism is identical.
Yes.
He wants to be steady. He genuinely wants to achieve Atmalpamiyena.
Yeah.
But his mind aggressively rebels.
He is trying to hold the profound, multi-parameter, cognitively exhausting spiritual task of feeling the joys and sorrows of all beings.
And his mental software just crashes. It throws up a spinning wheel of doubt, fear, and distraction.
Arjuna is looking at the ultimate spiritual directive and essentially saying, my hardware is insufficient to run this software.
The mind is fundamentally too restless to handle the cognitive and emotional load of universal empathy.
It is.
Okay, let's unpack this. How do we actually apply this today? We have this supreme, beautiful goal of empathy on one hand, and the stark biological reality of our scattered, tab-switching brains on the other.
It feels like an unbridgeable gap.
Right. How do we negotiate this massive gap without simply giving up in cynical despair?
This study guide anticipates this exact despair and provides a pragmatic framework for negotiating this tension in our daily lives.
Okay, what's step one?
The solution isn't to lower the philosophical ideal, but to shrink the battlefield of its application. You start by practicing Atmapamiyena in a highly localized microenvironment.
Meaning, your mission for today is to choose just one interaction, just one moment in your day where you consciously decide to make another person's experience your own.
Right. You do not have to save the world today.
You don't have to feel the sorrow of a billion people.
You just have to truly, deeply connect with one single person in front of you.
The text gives a phenomenally difficult yet deceptively simple example of how to do this. Truly listening to a friend's story without planning your response.
I want to hover on this.
Yeah, please do.
Because it sounds easy, but it is actually one of the hardest cognitive tasks we can attempt.
It is incredibly difficult. And the reason it is difficult is that planning a response is the primary default activity of the restless, ego-driven mind.
Exactly. Think about the mechanics of most conversations. When someone is talking to us, what are we usually doing behind our eyes?
We are scanning their words, mining their narrative for a jumping-off point so we can share our own related anecdote.
We are formulating unprompted advice they didn't ask for.
Or we are preparing a defense against a perceived slight. We are essentially taking their story and centering ourselves within it.
Because the brain seeks the path of least resistance, and the path of least resistance is always talking about ourselves.
Right. It's the ego constantly asserting its presence, demanding to exist, even if we're looking right at them, making perfect eye contact and nodding in agreement. Intellectually, we have opened a new tab in our brain labeled, "What I'm going to say next."
And the moment you open that tab, you are no longer practicing Atmapamiyena.
You're out of it.
You are no longer using your own self as a measure for their experience. You have turned their lived experience into a mere prop for your own self-expression.
So to listen without planning a response requires radical, almost unnatural presence.
It requires suppressing the ego's urge to perform. It means letting their words land in your consciousness without immediately trying to categorize them, fix them, or relate them back to your own life.
Man, that's hard. Another deeply practical example the guide offers is offering a quiet moment of internal patience to someone who is actively struggling in front of you.
Yes.
Maybe it's a cashier who is new on the job and fumbling awkwardly with the register while a long line forms. Or maybe it's a toddler who is having an absolute screaming meltdown over putting on their shoes in a public place.
Normally, the restless mind jumps immediately to self-centered annoyance.
Right, the internal monologue says, this is delaying me. This is inconvenient for my schedule. Why can't they just hurry up?
But the practice of Atmapamyana here is to violently pivot your perspective, to
Mm.
use your own self, your own memory of vulnerability as the measure.
Remember a time when you were new at a job, terrified of making a mistake, your hands shaking while a line of frustrated people stared daggers at you?
Remember a time when you felt entirely physically overwhelmed by your own emotions and couldn't articulate why, much like that toddler.
Take that specific visceral feeling, conjure it in your own body, and offer your patience from that space of shared vulnerability.
And the metric of success in this localized practice is beautiful,
Yeah.
the guide says. Measure their relief as your own relief. It brings us right back to the cooking analogy.
When that flustered cashier finally figures out how to scan the barcode, hands you the receipt, and exhales,
You exhale with them.
you feel their muscular tension release in your own shoulders.
Yeah.
If you can manage to do that just once today, you are actively practicing the yoga of equanimity. You are rewiring the hardware.
But we have to be realistic here.
Oh, absolutely. Because 20 minutes from now, you will fail.
Yep.
I will fail. We are all going to get distracted. You're going to sit down at your desk with a beautiful intention to be focused and empathetic, and within half an hour, you will find yourself mindlessly scrolling through a news feed.
Or abandoning a frustrating spreadsheet for the easy dopamine of checking a text message.
Right. So when the fracture happens, what then?
This is where the guide offers a crucial intervention. Step 2. When your mind inevitably rebels, you must actively validate the restlessness.
Validate it.
You must observe it without judging yourself harshly.
Which goes against every instinct ingrained in us by modern hustle culture.
Completely.
We are taught to be our own taskmasters. We are conditioned to crack the whip when we lose focus. Come on, focus. Stop being lazy. What is wrong with you?
This raises an important question, though. Why is non-judgment not just a nice idea, but an essential mechanical requirement for regaining focus?
Right. Why doesn't harsh internal discipline work?
It is because anger at your own distraction is just another more insidious form of distraction.
Oh, that's profound.
If you get mad at yourself for checking a news tab, you are now entirely consumed by your own anger, your own shame, and your self-judgment.
You have moved even further away from equanimity.
You are feeding the inherent turbulence of the mind with even more turbulence.
It is the equivalent of trying to put out a grease fire by throwing gasoline on it.
Exactly. Acknowledging the restlessness without a layer of emotional reactivity is the absolute first step in calming it down.
So you have to step back and simply observe the mechanism.
You say to yourself, my mind is wandering. It is seeking novelty. It is acting exactly as a human mind acts.
You treat your mind like that frantically miswired switchboard. You don't scream at the operator. You just gently walk over, unplug the wrong cord, and put it in the right socket.
I love that. And the guide offers the ultimate historical reassurance here. It reminds us to invoke what we could call the Arjuna defense.
The Arjuna defense. I like that.
If the great warrior Arjuna, standing on a battlefield, speaking directly to the divine, found his mind to be an unbearably chaotic storm.
You should absolutely not beat yourself up over wanting to check your email during a painfully slow Zoom meeting.
Exactly. Your biology is operating exactly as it was designed to. It is restless. Validate that reality. Accept the biological baseline.
Which leads us perfectly into the final, and perhaps most deeply transformative, paradigm shift offered by the text. Step 3.
Yes.
Once you have validated the restlessness, you must learn to embrace the struggle itself as the path.
We need to sit with this concept for a moment. Embrace the struggle.
We are so deeply conditioned by a result-oriented society to believe that if we are struggling, it means we are doing something wrong.
Right. We view the wandering of our mind, the friction of our attention, as a failure of our discipline.
We tell ourselves a story. We think, if I were just better at this, if I were more spiritually evolved, or if I had better executive function, I wouldn't be struggling so much. It would be effortless.
But the core revolutionary insight of this text is that a wandering mind is not a failure of your discipline. The struggle is the discipline.
Think about the mechanics of lifting weights. The bicep curl isn't defined by the moment the weight is resting comfortably at your shoulder. The curl is defined by gravity violently pulling against you. It is the friction in the muscle fibers, the burning sensation, the sheer effort required to lift the weight against the resistance of the earth.
It's a perfect mechanical analogy. If there were no gravity, no resistance, no struggle, there would be zero strength built.
None.
If the human mind were naturally perfectly still by default, there would be no spiritual or cognitive growth required to steady it.
We have to completely tear down and redefine our metrics for progress. Progress isn't about achieving a sudden, unbroken, lifelong state of perfect focus or perfect empathy.
That is a myth of spiritual perfection that does nothing but paralyze us with feelings of inadequacy.
We fall into this trap where we think, if we can't sustain the compassion of Gandhi or Mother Teresa 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, we might as well not even attempt to be empathetic.
But look closely at Arjuna's ultimate lesson. His radical honesty is the key takeaway of this entire section of the Gita.
Yeah.
He didn't nod along and pretend to have achieved perfection. It takes immense, profound courage to admit exactly where you are struggling, exactly where your capacities fall short.
Because only in that space of brutal honesty can the real incremental work begin.
So what does this all mean? It means your frustration with your own distracted mind is not the finish line where you throw in the towel, it is the starting line.
Your distraction is the raw material you are meant to work with. Every single time your mind wanders today, and it will wander 100 times.
Easily.
And you gently, without judgment, pull it back to the spreadsheet you were working on, or pull it back to genuinely listening to your friend's story. That act of returning is a repetition.
That is the heavy lifting. That is the yoga.
The constant, endless returning is the practice.
The return is the point.
This has been an incredibly rich, dense journey today. Let's take a breath and recap the arc of what we've uncovered.
Good idea.
We started at the absolute summit of human connection with the concept of apmapamina, the highest form of empathy, where we dissolve our boundaries and intimately feel another person's joy or sorrow as our own.
Much like the profound bodily satisfaction of cooking a warm meal for someone we love and feeling their comfort expand in our own chest.
A beautiful, unifying, yet terrifyingly demanding ideal.
Truly.
But then we immediately collided with the messy, biological reality of shloka 6.33. Arjuna's raw confession that his mind is simply too chaotic, too restless, to hold that level of equanimity.
A feeling we know intimately in the modern world when our digital screens crash, our browser tabs multiply, and our fragile architecture of focused shatters.
The timeless, inescapable reality of our human hardware.
Yeah.
And finally, we explored how to negotiate this gap today, not by giving up, but by shrinking the battlefield to one interaction at a time.
By validating our restless minds without throwing the gasoline of anger onto the fire.
And by realizing that the struggle to focus, the grueling effort to connect, isn't a sign of failure. It is the very path of growth we are meant to walk.
It is the only honest way forward.
So, to you, the listener, as you go back out into the world today, as you return to your screens, your meals, your commutes, and your conversations, I want you to remember this.
You are officially equipped with a 2,000-year-old permission slip to be wildly imperfect.
The greatest warriors and sages of antiquity struggled with the exact same restless mind you are struggling with. Your only job today is to keep trying to connect and to keep bringing the mind back gently every time it wanders.
And as we close, if we connect the deep philosophy we've explored today to the broader picture of the world we live in right now.
Yeah, let's zoom out.
This raises a deeply vital question. We've established that true empathy at Melpomene requires us to intimately feel another's reality, which demands an incredible amount of sustained attention, internal quiet, and cognitive bandwidth.
But our modern minds are constantly, aggressively being scattered by a million digital inputs, open tabs, and endless monetized notifications.
A constant, heavily engineered state of manufactured restlessness.
Exactly.
So, could our modern crisis of distraction actually be the root cause of our massive societal empathy deficit?
Oh, wow.
Think about it. If we cannot even sustain the baseline focus required to align a digital photograph or write a single email without our minds fracturing and seeking a dopamine hit, how can we possibly expect to possess the cognitive and emotional endurance to hold the profound, complex weight of another human being's reality?
That is an incredibly heavy realization, and it circles right back to where we started. We are not floating on a pristine, perfectly still lake. We are thrashing in the choppy, messy waves of our own profoundly distracted minds, desperately trying to learn how to swim toward each other.
That's beautifully put.
Leave that question lingering in your thoughts as you dive back into your day. Notice where your mind wanders. Notice where you can gently pull it back and see if you can manage to feel just one person's relief as your own today. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the source material. We will see you next time.